If you want to predict how your body will function at 75, forget the cholesterol number. Forget the number on the scale. Look at one thing: your stem cell activity. And after menopause, a specific process begins quietly suppressing that activity. Not because of age, because of a hormone that was managing your body's entire repair system, and whose withdrawal nobody warned you about. I call it the regenerative silence. And by the time most women recognize what it has been doing, it has already been active for years. It is why the waistband keeps expanding, even when you are eating carefully and walking every morning. It is why the energy disappears before the afternoon is over, precisely when you still have things to do. And it is why every effort you have made that did not move the needle has started to feel like it simply did not matter. It did matter. Every single one of those choices. The biology was working against you, and nobody gave you the name for it. I am Dr. Elizabeth Carter. I have spent 32 years treating women in midlife and beyond. And what I found when I looked closely at what the regenerative silence was actually doing, and what the research identifies as capable of reversing it, is not something a 15-minute appointment has time to cover. That is exactly why this channel exists. I am going to show you the specific compounds that peer-reviewed research associates with reactivating dormant stem cell mobilization in postmenopausal women. The exact amounts, the exact timing, and the one mistake that prevents women from seeing results, even when they add all the right foods to their routine. If this kind of evidence-based analysis is useful to you, please subscribe. I post 2 to 3 times a week. 2 seconds. Do it now. Now let's start with what stem cells actually are. Because most women have heard the term, but very few have been told what estrogen was doing to keep those cells active before the silence started. Think of your stem cells as a construction crew that lives inside your body. When you are young, this crew is massive, active, and constantly patrolling for damage. A blood vessel begins to stiffen, they rebuild it. Cartilage wearing down, they reinforce it. Metabolic tissue accumulating damage, they intervene. Every single day. As we age, that crew does not disappear. All 70 million of them are still there, but they go into a dormant state, sitting in the firehouse instead of out on calls. Here is the part most content about stem cells never explains. In women, estrogen was doing something to those stem cells that nobody told you would stop when menopause arrived. It was the dispatcher, the central call center that sent your repair crews to active job sites every single day. Research published in Circulation documented specifically that estrogen enhances the mobilization of endothelial progenitor cells, a critical type of stem cell responsible for blood vessel repair, from the bone marrow into active circulation. Research published in Menopause and in cardiovascular journals documents that postmenopausal women show measurably lower circulating counts of these cells than premenopausal women at equivalent body weight. The driver is not chronological age, it is the estrogen withdrawal. When estrogen withdrew at menopause, the dispatch signal went quiet, not because the crews disappeared, because nobody is calling them anymore. The firefighters are still in the station. The equipment is all there. Every day, small damage accumulates in your blood vessels, your joints, your metabolic tissue. No response. But here is what the research shows can actually call those crews back. Researchers studying adults with established cardiovascular disease, patients with hardened arteries and measurably reduced circulatory function, have them consume cocoa flavanol-rich foods every day for 30 days. At the end of that period, they measured circulating endothelial progenitor cell counts using flow cytometry, the same technology used in clinical hospital laboratories to count specific cell populations. Their mobilized repair cells had nearly doubled. This was not a subjective improvement report. This was a measured cell count, published data, verifiable in the cardiovascular research literature. The compounds responsible are called polyphenols, plant-based molecules found in specific foods. When you consume foods with concentrated polyphenols, they are processed by the digestive system. They enter the bloodstream. And here is the critical part. These molecules send a chemical signal directly to the bone marrow, where stem cells are stored and waiting, that triggers a release mechanism. It is like an emergency broadcast that bypasses the now silent dispatcher entirely and speaks directly to the repair crews. The signal says, there is work to be done. The cells respond. Now, here is what this means specifically for women after menopause. When estrogen withdrew, it did not only silence the dispatcher, it also left behind a more hostile environment for the cells that did make it into circulation. The chronic low-grade inflammation that builds after menopause, without estrogen's modulatory presence, actively suppresses stem cell activity once those cells are circulating. Polyphenols address both problems simultaneously. They restore the mobilization signal, and they begin to quiet the inflammatory environment that was working against the cells even after they deployed. But the stem cell mobilization is only the first of 3 mechanisms these compounds activate. And the second, the one that explains why the inflammatory environment after menopause was suppressing your repair crews, even when some of them managed to circulate, is the mechanism most physicians never have time to reach, even in a long appointment. The research identifies 3 specific pathways through which polyphenols act on postmenopausal physiology. Each one matters differently. The first involves what cellular researchers call AMPK, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase, a cellular energy switch. After menopause, the estrogen-supported insulin pathway that was efficiently moving energy into cells becomes less responsive. Polyphenols trigger this switch, opening a side door in cellular metabolism, an alternative route that allows cells to generate and deploy energy without requiring the now compromised primary pathway. For your stem cells, this matters directly. Mobilized repair cells need significant energy to deploy, migrate, and perform repair work. A body in metabolic inflexibility cannot fund a full repair operation. Research published in Cell Metabolism documents measurably reduced AMPK activity in postmenopausal women compared to premenopausal women at equivalent metabolic health markers. Not because of age, because of the hormonal environment change. The second pathway is the one I consider most important and most neglected in women's health conversations. After menopause, without estrogen's modulatory effect, chronic low-grade inflammation builds. I want to be precise here, because this is where most health content gets it wrong for women specifically. Acute inflammation is necessary. When you injure yourself, that immediate response is healthy. It is the body doing exactly what it should. The chronic kind is different. It is what happens when inflammatory cells remain persistently elevated long after any threat is resolved, and they begin causing damage instead of healing it. Think of it this way. Acute inflammation is like the fire department arriving, putting out the fire, and going home. Chronic inflammation is the fire department staying in your house for months after the fire is out, and eventually starting to break things. For your stem cells, this chronic presence is directly suppressive. Inflammatory compounds, including TNF-alpha and interleukin-6, have been documented to impair stem cell function and reduce their ability to locate and repair damaged tissue. Polyphenols act as a dimmer switch on this process, not eliminating inflammation, calibrating the chronic low-grade level back to where healing happens, not where it works against your repair crews. The third pathway surprised me when I first read this research carefully. Your body has the ability to grow new blood vessels, a process called angiogenesis. Estrogen actively promoted a protein called VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, the signal that instructs your body to build new capillaries. After menopause, that promotion is gone. Capillary networks deteriorate progressively. Fewer blood vessels means less oxygen delivered to your muscles, your organs, your brain. Research from Harvard Medical School identified that specific polyphenols can stimulate VEGF production independently of estrogen. In studies measuring capillary density in aging tissue following concentrated polyphenol administration, researchers documented new blood vessel formation in tissue that had been progressively losing its oxygen supply. In animal studies with aging subjects, capillary density increased by up to 40%. The tissue that had been starved for oxygen suddenly had a new supply line. 3 pathways: stem cell mobilization, inflammation suppression, new blood vessel formation, each one addressing a different consequence of what the regenerative silence left behind. But all 3 of these pathways describe what happens in the bloodstream. What happens before the bloodstream in your gut produces a 4th effect that connects and amplifies all 3 of them. And this is the connection most content about stem cells and polyphenols misses entirely. When you eat polyphenol-rich foods, something important happens before those compounds ever reach your circulation. Your gut bacteria intercept them. They feed on polyphenols. And when gut bacteria metabolize these compounds, they produce short-chain fatty acids, specifically a compound called butyrate. Butyrate is the preferred fuel for the cells that line your intestinal wall, and it is a potent anti-inflammatory compound. Research published in peer-reviewed immunology journals documents that butyrate reduces inflammatory markers in adults with the chronic low-grade inflammation pattern, the same pattern that builds progressively in the years after menopause in the absence of estrogen's modulating effect. The double mechanism works like this. The polyphenols mobilize stem cells and quiet inflammation directly through the bloodstream. Then they feed your gut bacteria, which produce their own anti-inflammatory output independently, a cascade, each link generating the next. And here is the structural reason this matters after menopause. Approximately 70% of your immune system resides in the wall of your gut. The immune cells on one side, the gut bacteria on the other, communicating continuously through the membrane between them, like 2 rooms sharing a wall that conducts every signal. When gut bacteria are well nourished and diverse, they send calibrating signals to your immune system. Inflammation stays low. Stem cell activity stays possible. When gut bacteria are poorly fed, the signals change. Inflammation rises. Stem cell suppression follows. Research published in Menopause and in gut microbiome journals documents that postmenopausal women show measurably altered microbial diversity compared to premenopausal women, a shift that correlates with higher inflammatory markers and reduced metabolic efficiency. The estrogen withdrawal did not only change your hormonal profile, it changed the bacterial environment that was maintaining the anti-inflammatory conditions your stem cells required. Now here is where most content about this subject stops. And here is where most women conclude that supporting this system requires a complete overhaul of everything they eat. It does not. Most women watching this who are actively working to protect their health after menopause have already started making changes. Eating more carefully, adding berries when they remember, watching what they drink. Good choice made. The effort is correct. But here is the gap nobody is explaining between that effort and the results. Researchers following thousands of adults over multiple years tracked polyphenol intake through detailed dietary records and measured outcomes including cognitive function, physical performance, and biological aging markers. The group with the highest consistent daily polyphenol intake showed 35% slower cognitive decline than the lowest intake group. same bodies. Similar overall caloric intake, different polyphenol specification. You do not need to become a health fanatic. You do not need to overhaul everything you eat or spend hours in the kitchen every morning. You need the right compounds at the right concentration with the consistency that shifts a biological baseline over time, not the generic advice. The specific protocol the research actually used. I have placed the link to the exact protocol I reference in this video in the pinned comment directly below. Do not go looking for it anywhere else. The pinned comment is the first thing you will see when you scroll down. Everything you need is there. And that protocol comes down to one specific question, not which foods, but which compounds at which concentrations that the research actually measured, and what most women adding individual food sources are missing every single morning. The research identifies several categories of foods that activate the 4 pathways we covered. Berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries for their anthocyanin content and direct stem cell mobilization signal. Dark chocolate at 70% cacao or higher for its proanthocyanin profile. Green tea for its EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, the polyphenol studied most extensively in the AMPK activation literature. Pomegranate for punicalagin, which gut bacteria convert to urolithin A, a compound in active mitochondrial health research. Mushrooms for their beta-glucan content, and for ergothioneine, an antioxidant your body cannot produce that accumulates specifically in tissues under oxidative stress. Most women who add these foods to their routine make a mistake that looks correct from the outside. They pick up whatever berries are available, tea from standard grocery store bags, whichever dark chocolate is in the house. The research that documented near doubling of circulating stem cells used standardized polyphenol concentrations, specific, measured amounts. Commercially available dark chocolate varies by 40 to 60% in actual flavanol content, depending on how it was processed. Standard tea bags contain widely variable EGCG levels based on growing region and processing method. Right information, wrong product. And the most invisible one, because the effort looks identical from the outside. Not generic polyphenol powder from an undefined source. Not a single compound extract that addresses one of the 4 pathways while leaving the other 3 open. The compound that the research identifies at the concentration the studies actually measured is a standardized multi-pathway extract. Ceremonial grade EGCG from green tea for the AMPK pathway. Standardized berberine for the GLP-1 and insulin sensitivity pathway, studied specifically in postmenopausal women. P-synephrine from Seville orange peel to reactivate the thermogenic signal estrogen used to support. Capsaicinoids from Andalusian red pepper for the post-meal calorie burn window that narrows after menopause. Himalayan ginger for blood sugar stability and the craving drift that peaks in the late afternoon. Korean red ginseng for hormonal and metabolic steadiness in postmenopausal physiology. Spanish red apple vinegar to support the satiety signal that menopause has progressively quieted. I put together the protocol I would hand to a patient walking out of my office, because I have spent 32 years watching women work harder than they ever should have had to, against a process they did not know how to name, and because most of the women in that office looked exactly like you. I use and recommend this because it is the closest commercially available formula to what the clinical research actually supports for women over 60. And because the women on this channel deserve the same answer my patients get. One note on the berberine specifically. This compound addresses the same metabolic pathway as GLP-1 receptor agonist medications through a different non-pharmaceutical mechanism. The magnitude is different. That is precisely why berberine is a daily dietary addition and not a prescription intervention. Research on this compound has specifically included postmenopausal women. 1 capsule, a full glass of water, morning before breakfast, every day. I have seen what happens when women who have been doing the right things for years finally receive the right specification. And I want to tell you about 4 of them. Margaret, 67, Denver, Colorado. 2 years of eating carefully and walking every morning, and every season the waistline was tighter and the energy was lower. After 8 consistent weeks on the protocol, her afternoon energy held past 5 for the first time in years. Her inflammatory markers, which her internist had been monitoring quarterly, dropped measurably at her next blood draw. Her internist asked what she had changed. Susan, 62, Charlotte, North Carolina. Susan had read the research on berberine. She had been taking a generic powder from a discount shelf for 6 months. No measurable shift in fasting glucose. No change in energy. What she did not know was that generic berberine powder varies widely in actual bioavailability. Right information, wrong product. 4 weeks after switching to standardized extract, her fasting glucose moved into a range she had not seen in 2 years. Diane, 70, Phoenix, Arizona. Diane's cardiologist had been tracking her flow-mediated dilation score, a clinical measure of arterial flexibility, for 3 years, watching it decline. Before starting, Diane brought the protocol ingredients to her cardiologist. No contraindications with her existing medications. 6 months later, her score had improved. Her cardiologist noted it in the chart. Carol, 64, Portland, Oregon. Carol was skeptical and methodical. She built a daily tracking log. Fasting glucose every morning. Afternoon energy rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Weekly waist measurement, 90 days. By week 6, her fasting glucose was in a range she had not seen in 3 years. By week 10, her afternoon energy had moved from a consistent 3 to a consistent 7. Carol still tracks her numbers. She has not stopped the protocol. Here is the timing detail most women starting this protocol miss. AMPK, the cellular energy switch we discussed, is naturally more active in the fasted state, before your first meal. Polyphenols that trigger AMPK have a synergistic relationship with this fasted state. Taking the protocol in the morning, before breakfast, combines 2 AMPK activating signals simultaneously. The timing is not arbitrary. It is where the research and the biology align. The studies that measured near doubling of circulating stem cells used 30-day protocols. This is not a medication where you feel immediate relief. You are shifting a biological baseline. 30 days for measurable changes in inflammatory markers. 90 days for the full trajectory to become pronounced. Consistency is not motivational language here. It is the mechanism itself. The regenerative silence suppresses stem cells. Suppressed stem cells allow visceral fat to accumulate without the repair intervention that was keeping metabolic tissue healthy. That visceral fat produces the inflammatory compounds that further suppress stem cell mobilization. Over years, this cycle deepens. The protocol interrupts it at the biochemical level, not temporarily, structurally. Imagine waking up and the joint stiffness that was there before breakfast is quieter. Imagine the afternoon energy holding steady past 5. Imagine the waistband that has been expanding for 4 years beginning to move in the other direction, not because you changed everything you eat, but because your body's repair crew finally received the signal it has been waiting for since the silence started. Every year this window narrows. The biology does not pause while you decide. The research is in the journals. The protocol is specific. The link is in the pinned comment. Here is what we covered. Your body contains approximately 70 million stem cells that can be reactivated. After menopause, the estrogen that was mobilizing those cells is gone. The regenerative silence is not aging. It is a specific biological process with a specific biological response. 4 documented pathways. Direct stem cell mobilization from bone marrow. Suppression of the chronic inflammation that was blocking those cells. stimulation of new blood vessel growth, and the gut bacteria cascade that sustains all three. The protocol is specific. 1 standardized extract, full glass of water, morning before breakfast, every day. 30 days for measurable baseline shift. Aging does not mean inevitable decline. The women I have seen thrive at 70 and beyond are not genetically different from the women who accepted the decline. They gave their bodies the signals the biology required. After menopause, with the map that actually matches the territory. The only question left is whether you are going to give your body's repair crew the signal it has been waiting for, or leave the door closed for 1 more year. I have pinned a comment directly below this video with the exact product, the exact protocol, and the exact timing written out in plain language. It is the first thing you will see when you scroll down. Everything you need is there. Do not wait. Thank you for watching.